Tariffs, noise है, इसमें बहुत कुछ होगा, हर दिन पेपर में आप पढ़ेंगे. Because it's a predominantly generic market, the trade makes a much larger part of the cut. So what we sell for pennies gets sold for dollars in the US by the trade. Just because it is commodity doesn't mean it is a bad business. Cross a threshold of $1 billion, the business becomes cash flow generating. There's no point in being at the same place earning 50 plus ROIC versus that, let's say 25 or 20 ROIC and keep moving forward. You can't be an innovator at heart with 500 crores of EBITDA. You would probably be betting the house if you were going to use that capital and doing innovation. See, we want to buy a company which is today available for 100, where I think it can be 200. Markets factor today's truth fully. I am trying to find tomorrow's truth. On tariffs, as far as generics are concerned, tariffs are irrelevant. They will be passed on. Tariffs, मैं तो कहता हूँ आज ही लग जाए. In 6 months, we will not be worried about tariffs at all. My experience with FDA, it is broadly an opportunity. Companies, promoters, entrepreneurs, they will also reinvent themselves. I want to do well in the business. I'm not a crook.
Every fund manager has few beliefs. Beliefs that work until they don't. Behind every belief is a story that fund managers would tell themselves. This is the Ramneek Kundra Show, where performance takes the backseat and thinking takes over the mic. To unpack the healthcare space in India, we have Chirag with us, who is one of the fund managers at DSP. Hi Chirag.
Hi, Sravani.
Nice to see you and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Looks like your show is getting very popular, so I have to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. I've been interacting with you for past 2 years now, and there have been some interactions which have been really insightful for me personally, specifically related to the healthcare space. And you were an analyst before, and now you're a fund manager. First of all, tell me, like, how did the transition happen? And how did you start your career in the fund management space?
So, nothing very exciting. I'm a chartered accountant by qualification, born and brought up in Mumbai. Got attracted to the stock market because a lot of people told me that you can make good money out of the stock market. So, fresh out of CA, I started working for an investment bank, and that's how we started. And then when I think about it, time just flew, and I'm now more than 24, 25 years in the market. A lot of that covering the healthcare sector. So for the most part, if you think about the last 25 years, I've probably been on the buy side, equal of the last 25 on the buy and the sell side. On the sell side across multiple firms, and then on the buy side, 2 firms, DSP being the second one. So not a very, nothing exciting through the journey. It's just passed my CA, got into an investment bank, started working, got into research, got into pharma, and then just, things moved around.
So I want to ask the question, why did you choose healthcare? It feels more like healthcare chose you.
For sure. Healthcare wasn't my first choice, clearly. I mean, I'm a chartered accountant by qualification. I'm not clearly trained to cover pharmaceuticals, etc. But I think the sector clearly chose me, and the rest is history. So, I think the rules of investing in good businesses, those remain the same, right? And we tweak them a little bit here and there. But at heart, really, you are just trying to find businesses that are undervalued, and healthcare has some nuances here and there. But by and large, the framework, the way you think, that pretty much remains the same. You fundamentally, as an investor, you will tweak your approach a little bit here and there. Every day, each day is a learning. As a fund manager, also, we grow every day. But you don't fundamentally change who you are, right? If you are, in cricketing parlance, if you are a pace bowler, you are a pace bowler, right? Just because the pitch wouldn't be conducive to a pace bowler, and if I ask you to spin, sure you will, but you wouldn't excel at that, right? Because you are at heart a pace bowler, and that does not change. So that's essentially, each of us need to actually, investing is in that sense a lot more personal as a journey, a lot less, to do with the rest of the market,
When you started your career with healthcare, didn't you feel like you were being pigeonholed into just one sector? When other sectors are doing well, sometimes, it's capital goods flying high, when infrastructure, financials, didn't you feel like you were just missing out, and that could be a career downside eventually?
Yes and no. Yes, because there have been flavors of the season all through the last 25 years. Of course, there have been many flavors, but all through, I think healthcare has been always around. It's one of the sectors which is just always around. May not flourish, but also doesn't go through a bad cycle. So always around, in that sense. So that is something which is very unique to healthcare as a sector. Also important to note is that while we cluster everything as healthcare, within that there are multiple sub-segments, multiple businesses, each of which have very, very different drivers. And there will always be a season for some of those businesses, always be a season for some of those which will go through a bad cycle, some of those going through a good cycle, and so on and so forth. So that way the diversity of the sector is really very good, and that's something that attracts me. If you think about the last maybe 15 years of healthcare investing, the sector has really come of age, right? 15 years back we used to have large India business and we used to have a large US business, right? We used to have hardly a couple of hospitals, a couple of diagnostic companies, probably not even a couple of diagnostic companies. Fast forward today, you have multiple hospitals, you have multiple diagnostic companies, you have multiple retail chains, etc. And more are coming, right? Doing IPO, more are getting listed. We have multiple API companies, generics as well as CDMO companies. We have the India formulations business, the traditional India formulations business, and the US generics as well as the other generic exports. So a big buffet of companies has come through, which is a great thing for any investor in the sector, because you just have so many more choices to invest in.
So it doesn't make it a one factor bet. That's what you are saying.
That's the beauty of the sector.
Okay. So why does this happen when healthcare actually start working? Most of the things are working in one tandem with each other. If it's not a one sector bet.
See, a lot of the market cap sized, large sized companies actually reside in the US generic and the India generic space.
What are these spaces? What is generic? What is
So
US generic?
Generic is
India
essentially
generic?
when you sell a medicine off patent, right? When you sell it under patent, it's a patented drug. The big pharma companies, the big multinationals, the Pfizer's and the AstraZeneca's of the world are the innovators of the drugs. They are doing the new chemical entity.
So they do brand it.
They do branded, they do patented.
Patented drugs.
When those drugs go off patent, India reverse engineers those drugs and we sell it in the open market as generics, right? And we are very, very good at reverse engineering products and copying those drugs and making them cheap. India has some inherent process chemistry skills, right? And we've built these over the last 2, 3, maybe more decades, right? Imagine this: India we hardly import any medicines, right? 99% of the medicines that we consume are internally manufactured, right? And this is for almost like 20% of the world population, right? We hardly export anything to China, which is another 15% of the. So to 1/3 or maybe 40% of the world, we don't export.
Why? Why is that?
So China doesn't import anything pretty much. It's a local industry. They manufacture on their own. India also we don't import much. Because
so is China as good as us?
China is for their own market as good as us, but not for the exports. China hardly exports globally, because on the formulation side, we have to manufacture, we have to make dossiers, you have to make products by convincing the respective country's regulatory authority that I can manufacture this product, that this paracetamol that I am manufacturing is similar to the paracetamol that a innovator is, let's say Glaxo in this case, is manufacturing, right? That requires paperwork, that requires communications with the regulator and so on and so forth. China is not great with English, we're good with English. So we've actually managed this whole cycle of dossiers and so on and so forth much better, and hence there's a history to this. We've just built on that. So we're good at process chemistry, reverse engineering products. You give somebody that this is the API, they will reverse engineer in India and manufacture those products, right? What some of our Indian companies have done to antiretroviral medicines used in anti-AIDS, etc., is world famous.
Which companies are those?
These are so Cipla has been the pioneer there, clearly. What multinationals sold for a few $100s, Cipla put out as $1 a day kind of treatment. So really revolutionary kind of work. So so our process chemistry skills very established. Our dossier filing, our English.
What is dossier like in?
Like I said, a filing which tells your regulator that look, I can manufacture this product and this product is very similar to a innovator's product that you are today consuming, and hence please allow me to manufacture. I will sell it cheap in the market because it's off patent.
You talked about formulation side. What is the formulation side? What happens in formulation? Give me an example of a drug.
So think of it. Think of a paracetamol is the API. Crocin is the
API
brand.
is
the active pharmaceutical ingredient, right? And active pharma ingredient mane, it is the chemical which actually does the job that it's supposed to do. Okay. So if you have a headache, the headache is relieved by the API that goes into the body. But how it is consumed, you don't consume the API directly. You put it in a tablet, you put it in the capsule and so on.
So why are other countries not so good at it? What is India's edge over here? Like you said, process chemistry and reverse engineering the stuff. Why are other countries not able to reverse engineer?
Dekhiye, there's a little bit of scale as well. We started manufacturing these drugs for our country. We're a poor country and we couldn't afford multinational drugs which were expensive. We started doing this for our own country, right? And we are, like I said, we are 15% of the world population, right? When we started doing this for our own self, we started getting scale, right? Imagine a large manufacturing, jisme you are manufacturing tablets, right? These machines, these are automatic machines, right? They're just punching tablets, right? Scale has a very big advantage here, okay, right? And we are doing this for 15% of the world population anyway, right? Now if I have to add another 15% of the world population, what does it take? Not much. All I need to do is in each of these markets I have to go to those regulators and tell them that look, I can manufacture this product, it is the exact same as what you're anyway buying from an innovator, right? And of course there's litigation, there's law, there's regulation, all of that.
You need an army of lawyers.
वो सारी चीजें आपको चाहिए, but the point is at heart what is it? Is that ये जो ग्लैक्सो मेडिसिन बना रहा है, मैं भी सेम मेडिसिन बना सकता हूँ और ये मैं आपके लॉ के हिसाब से आई विल फॉलो द लॉ ऑफ द लैंड. दैट्स द प्रोसेस. स्किल क्या है इसमें? स्किल इज एपीआई, रेगुलेटर, वहाँ का रेगुलेटर आपकी फैसिलिटी आके चेक करेगा, राइट? आपने किसी एक पर्टिकुलर कंट्री का लॉज फॉलो किया, लेकिन किसी और कंट्री का 2 लॉ और है, 3 लॉ कम है, आपको वो सारा फॉलो करना है, राइट? सो यू हैव टू डू minimum of all of those, right? Or like each of our factories will probably be approved by multiple regulators, 10, 15, maybe 20. So it is because none of the regulators will just say that. Of course they will feel happy that ठीक है, आपका WHO approved है, आपका USFDA approved है, great.
But they glance through it.
They will glance through it and they will give their own approval, right? Because the regulator is finally responsible for putting a quality product in his consumer's hand. So pharma is a very, in that sense, very regulated environment में आप operate कर रहे हो. ये नहीं है कि आप if today you and I decide we can't just randomly sell medicines, right? it has to be approved, it has to have all of those checks and balances that you.
But ऐसा नहीं है कि यूरोप में if the rules are very stringent related to regulation कि आप यूरोप को बस टारगेट करो in terms of just getting the approvals and everyone else will mostly end up following.
तो कैसे होता है उसमें भी rules are different कि जैसे आप यूरोप में एक कंट्री से अप्रूवल लेंगे बट फिर इंडिविजुअली हर कंट्री में जाकर के बेस्ड ऑन द वर्क दैट यू डन इन
localized.
या in that sense, right? It's very similar कि आपको इंडिविजुअली जाकर हर कंट्री से भी अप्रूवल लेना है.
Okay.
तभी आप उसके सिस्टम में जाकर के रिसाइड करोगे, राइट? तभी आपको एट द फार्मेसी आपकी दवाई बिकेगी. अदरवाइज फार्मेसी वाले को, अदरवाइज इन द फार्मेसी एवरीथिंग इज पेड बाय इंश्योरेंस, राइट? तो वो कैसे आपका कोड ही नहीं आएगा. आपका कोड आएगा तभी जब आपको रेगुलेटर अप्रूवल देगा कि यस ठीक है, आपने जो दवाई बनाई हमने देखा it is very similar to what the innovator makes. This is the paperwork behind all of that, right. And hence we are approving, and hence we are giving you this code. And the next time a branded drug gets prescribed by the doctor, the patient has the option of consuming a cheaper generic medicine. This is it.
So this was insightful in terms of like formulations and understanding the API and what is India doing different, like process chemistry, and you said reverse engineering and why it is good at it. ये समझ में आ गया. But मुझे एक बार आप landscape बताओ कि how does Indian healthcare stack up, like in terms of the segments, in terms of the companies that are working in these segments which are relatable, which are understandable to like large audience.
एक बड़ा इसमें हेल्थ केयर है. इसमें दो बिग ब्रेक्स, राइट? वन इज फार्मास्यूटिकल विच इज लार्जली द प्रोडक्ट कंपनीज, एंड देन देयर इज अ सर्विसेज एलिमेंट विच इज द कंपनीज हु आर नॉट सेलिंग प्रोडक्ट्स और मेडिसिन्स, दे आर इसेंशियली सर्विसेज कंपनीज, राइट? व्हेन यू कम टू प्रोडक्ट्स, राइट, प्रोडक्ट्स में आपके API आ गया. API में जेनेरिक्स और CDMO. व्हेन यू सेल अ API एज ए पोस्ट पैटेंट प्रोडक्ट, it is a generic, right? When you sell an API to an innovator with a proprietary recipe that belongs only to him, we call it CDMO.
So CDMO is just a branded API, that's what you are saying?
Patented API. Let us not even call it brand.
Patented API.
Patented API. देखिए केमिकल को नहीं पता है कि वो patented है इसीलिए $500 में बिक रहा है या $5000 में बिक रहा है. केमिकल तो केमिकल है, उसका मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेम है, राइट? सो जेनेरिक अगर हो गया तो वही सेम चीज आपको $50 में मिलेगी. 500 will become $50. Why does that happen? Patent has been lost, right? Okay. Manufacturing तो pretty much similar, maybe plus minus a little bit, of course, costs will come down and so on and so forth. But इतना भी ज़्यादा difference नहीं होता है. So that's one break of API within that generics and CDMO, okay. Right? Then you come on to the formulations bit. We are still on the product side, right? Products में formulations में essentially either in India or in exports market, correct? जो इंडिया का मार्केट है ये बहुत अट्रैक्टिव मार्केट है बिकॉज इसमें कांस्टेंट ग्रोथ आती है और इसमें हाई रिटर्न ऑन कैपिटल भी है क्योंकि आपकी इन्वेस्टमेंट जो है वो कम होती है. इमेजिन करिए आपको बिफोर यू गेट द फर्स्ट बिजनेस, राइट, यू हैव टू हैव द फैक्ट्री अप एंड रनिंग. रेगुलेटर आके आपको regulator will never approve an empty box, right? They will need to see the product you are making. Yeah. तो आपको फैक्ट्री चलानी है, कॉन्स्टेंटली चलानी है, वो प्रोडक्ट बनाना है. रेगुलेटर आके आपको अप्रूवल देगा, ठीक है अब मैंने अप्रूवल. तो जब आपने फैक्ट्री डाली 3 साल तक तो फैक्ट्री आई, अगले दो साल आपने रेगुलेटर को बुलाया, कहा कि सर हमारा पेपर वर्क है, हमने सब कर लिया है, वी आर एबल टू मैन्युफैक्चर दिस प्रोडक्ट. तब रेगुलेटर अपने समय पर आएगा, रेगुलेटर आके अप्रूव करेगा, फिर आप जाओगे. तो इमेजिन करिए आप फ्रॉम द टाइम यू आर स्टार्टेड टू पुट अप फैक्ट्री 5 साल तक कोई रेवेन्यू नहीं है, राइट? तो वो एक्सपोर्ट्स का जो बिजनेस है वहाँ पर लॉन्ग जेस्टेशन भी है, वहाँ पे आपकी वर्किंग कैपिटल भी जाएगी और वो ज़्यादा टफ मार्केट भी है वर्सेस इंडिया जहाँ पे रेगुलेटर्स रेगुलेटरी ईजियर है. इट्स अ मोर ब्रांडेड बिजनेस. तो फॉर्मुलेशंस में एक्सपोर्ट्स और इंडिया आ गए. इंडिया में कांस्टेंट ग्रोथ है. मोस्ट ऑफ आर लार्ज कंपनीज हैव फॉलोड दिस प्रोटोटाइप जो इंडिया में, इंडिया का जो फॉर्मुलेशन बिजनेस है उससे जो कैश आता है उसे हम डिप्लॉय करते हैं एक्सपोर्ट्स में. दैट्स द प्रोटोटाइप दैट मोस्ट ऑफ द कंपनीज हैव ग्रोन. आज अगर हमारी कंपनीज इतनी बड़ी है वो इसलिए है क्योंकि उन्होंने इंडिया में बहुत पैसा कमाया एंड दैट मनी गॉट रीडिप्लॉयड इनटू अ exports business.
But doesn't it overall harm the business, like in terms of, probably it gives you longevity because you have now another arm, right? But what about the intrinsic terminal value? Like you think about a business that's generating 20% ROE and ROIC for you, and then you compare it with something that earns like 10, 11, 12% kind of ROIC. Overall the profile becomes 16, 17, 18%, but incrementally you are deploying in low capital efficiency. Is that right?
Yes, it is. But see, you have to, at the end of the day, optimize the absolute profits that you are going to make 5, 10,
profit pool,
20 years down the line. If you stay, one of the largest company, Sun Pharma, it's a very large company, right? Largest in India, right? And a phenomenal company. It's the first generation that has built this kind of company, right?
Became the largest,
right. Today, India is probably 40-45% of this company's sales, right? Imagine if this company would have decided to focus only on India, right? 10 years back, or maybe it be half the size. And what would have happened in the process is that the cash flow that the company would have got, they would have probably dividended it out, or maybe buybacks or whatever, so on and so forth. The fact that that company did not choose to do that is actually a great thing, because the size has now become such a large thing for Sun that it helps them, now their size is large, now they can actually dabble into multiple things. So, this is a very lesser known fact that while Sun is a very large India business, they are also a very large branded generic business in the global world, right? And that is something that takes time to build. Over time it gets built.
So in countries like Russia or India, do people go for branded generics more often than they go for generics?
Large part of the market by value is branded today in most of these markets.
But volume?
By volume, the generic side is actually going up because generics are cheaper inherently, and they're able to tap the new patient recruitment, which is bottom of the pyramid, those guys. So the way this broadly works is that a lot of these patients may not have had any access to medicines. This is a patient recruitment, and then over time, people will move as they seek better quality medicines, they will move probably to the brands. But a large part of, probably if I were to guess, and this is just a guess, I'm not sure, but half will be by volume, and 80-20 will be by value in terms of.
Okay, so in generics, essentially, if I have to boil it down, generics, you are saying generic is something which is like, oh, I need paracetamol, and branded generic would be, oh, I need Dolo 650.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Understood. Understood. What makes Indian businesses, pharma businesses, like really competitive in the US as well? Like not beyond just process chemistry in terms of pricing and everything.
Of course, costing is a very, very large component of this.
But China could have won that game as well.
Not really.
Okay.
See, the Chinese are busy selling medicines in their own country. The realizations for Indian companies is much higher in China versus in the US, because in the US, because it's a predominantly generic market, the trade makes a much larger part of the cut, right? So what we sell for pennies or maybe tens of pennies gets sold for dollars in the US by the trade, right? So that kind of margin they're actually making. Manufacturers don't make that kind of money, right? So it's a very price conscious market because it's generic, it's fairly commodity. Just because it is commodity doesn't mean it is a bad business, right? It goes through its cycles, yes. But is it a bad business? Is it, is it a sustainably poor ROIC business? The answer is probably not. Look at the success stories that we've had, right? Of course, and we've had disappointments as well, but we've had equal amounts of success as well. Once you cross a threshold of $1 billion kind of a number in the US, the business becomes cash flow generating. And when you look at some of our larger US only businesses, a fair amount of those listed, you realize that they are cash flow generating, they are ROIC generating as well. So it is not right to say that US is perennially a poor ROIC business. In the initial days, much like everything else in the US, in the initial days it will not be very, very remunerative, but as you reach a certain scale, it starts to become a fairly reasonable ROIC.
Even the generic business.
Even the generic business. Even the generic business. So now you, as a company, you have to decide whether you have that kind of ambition. Will you ever reach that kind of
and time horizon
and that kind of a time horizon? And companies are completely well within their thought that, look, I don't want to fight this battle. So you have to pick your battles, right? Some companies may choose to be predominantly branded franchises because that's what their key strength is, that's what their key DNA is. Some companies may say, we're manufacturers at heart, let us manufacture. Why can't we manufacture for the biggest market in the world, right? By and large, for any drug, volume wise, US will be 40% of the volume of that drug. Now if you're a manufacturer at heart, you can't stay away from that market. So these are nuances. I mean, you can't just say that this is a bad business, will remain bad business forever, this is a good business, will remain a good business forever. Finally, you have to look at the mix of both of that and what the stock, that company has to offer, where are valuations and where are the markets getting some of these things.
So what you are saying is these companies are necessarily not going for just the highest ROIC or highest margin business, which is Indian business or something like that, but rather going for longevity of the business by diversifying into the biggest markets of the world. And that's a trade-off you have to make, because you are going for a profit pool which will help you generate, even if it's at half the margin, it will help you generate significantly more profit and more shareholder value as well.
Exactly. And then every once in a while in the US, you tend to get lucky with an exclusivity product. What you do with that capital, right, is very, very critical. A couple of our companies have done significant acquisitions.
Give me an example.
Look at someone like a Torrent Pharma, right? They got lucky with a couple of molecules in the US, and their first acquisition in India was born out of the capital that they generated.
If you say molecule, what do you mean?
One
lucky with
specific
molecule.
product that they sold during exclusivity in the US, right? In the US generic market. They made a lot of money in that, right? And then they utilized that capital to acquire something in India, right? So perfect use of one-off cash flow getting used to build something very, very sustainable, right? So, and there are multiple such examples where what you do with that cash flow is very, very critical. So it's not right to say that US generics is a written off kind of a market. It's competitive, yes, it's commodity, yes, but every once in a while you get this.
So you're saying the asymmetry of being in the US is worth way more than not being in the US?
Is what my sense is. It's a large market, large pool of capital that's available to you from the India business that you can keep deploying, and you have to choose the bets that you have. It is a large market, you can't stay away from that market, and of course competitive, of course commodity, of course goes through cycles and so on and so forth, but you have to really play this, and some of our companies have really played it well.
One more thing, like why does Indian side of the business ends up making way more money than the US sides of the business, like just not from the branded or generic point of view, but also like in other ways. Like I have seen, Cipla would do something like 24% kind of, 30% kind of ROICs on certain products in India, but they would do similar products in the US, but the ROIC over there would be something like 10% to 12%. Why does that happen?
So in India, it's a very distributed, fragmented distribution, right? The manufacturers make their pound of flesh. Working capital in India is hardly 30-40 days, versus that in the US it is 180 days. Some of the Latin American markets, you send product, it takes as many days in just on the ship. So very, very different working capital requirements between both the businesses.
Why is that so?
Again, similar, like I said, what a distributor, to a distributor you probably give a few days of credit, versus here you have to give a lot of credit, plus the product goes in a ship. You have to keep inventory in the warehouses in the US, in other markets, and so on and so forth. Which is the lead time of this. So that's one aspect. The other bit is on the capital intensity, as in the fixed asset of the business. In India, you can manufacture a product, use toll manufacturers. It's easier to get a manufacturing license, whereas in the exports market, you have to manufacture in your own factory. It takes time for that to come through. In many cases, the pricing in India is also very, very good, because these are sold as brands and so on and so forth. Classic evidence of this is if you look at the multinational companies, right, and there are a fair number of those listed. Look at their return on capital, look at the capital invested in the business. Most of their balance sheet is in cash, right? There's hardly any fixed assets on the book, there's hardly any working capital on the book, etc. So that's indicator of the capital intensity of the pharmaceutical business. Most of our Indians may not be very, very far. I mean, it will be a little bit more in terms of capital intensity, but not very, very far on the India business. But as promoters and as entrepreneurs, these companies have chosen that we will redeploy a part of that cash into the building and exports business, and that is the reason why you see the Indian companies not report the kind of high ROICs that the multinationals report. In my mind, when I think about these businesses, 50% ROIC is not a goal, Ramneek, right? Anything beyond 20, 25 is a good number.
Yeah.
Right. What I want is longevity.
Sustainability.
Sustainability and longevity, as in a much larger target addressable market. Am I going into newer markets, expanding the TAM, and so on and so forth. There's no point in being at the same place earning 50 plus ROIC, right? And versus that, let's say 25 or 20 ROIC, and keep moving forward. I think at any day take that other bet, the second one at any point in time.
So if we are so good at capital, right? Like if we are so good at generating ROICs in Indian business, and you said like there's a lot of profit pool that's available to Indian companies, and they have started investing in the US and exporting globally. Why are we not able to innovate?
We are copycats at heart. Look, the genesis of our ability to copycat is that we were a poor country, nobody was giving us medicines, we started manufacturing for our own. We said, our history is that we said we will not respect process patents, we will respect only product patents, right? Which means that if I can manufacture the same drug using a different route, different process, then I can manufacture that drug, right? And we are who we are today on the generic side because of that rule. Now if you think about ability to innovate, right, it's a completely different skill set, much longer gestation, right? What is 5 years of gestation in generics with a lot of hard assets, etc., is probably 10-12 years in innovation with hardly any hard assets, more of that in soft assets like tangibles and spends, etc. So the So the spend that you're doing in innovation, you don't know where it is going, right? On the generic side, you can see factories that I've built, right? Just imagine the comfort of a promoter, that this is the factory I'm building, कुछ ना कुछ तो बना लेंगे यहाँ, और चलिए यूएस के लिए नहीं बनाएंगे, रशिया के लिए बना लेंगे, रशिया के लिए नहीं बनाया, साउथ अफ्रीका के लिए बना लेंगे, कहीं ना कहीं तो ये दवाइयाँ बिक जानी।
बट इफ वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट लॉन्जेविटी, ये गलत वे नहीं है सोचने का कि इनोवेट करना चाहिए। ज़्यादा,
see, it's about evolution of every company. The best in this, you know, in our journey is again Sun Pharma. I keep talking about Sun Pharma, but it's the largest, you know,
fraction. It's good at innovation.
No, their journey in innovation started when they made about 6,000 odd crores of EBITDA, right?
6,000
crores. Okay. Because you need capital, Ramneek. You can't be a small company and you know, innovate, because I mean, you can be, if you are sitting out of the US, you will have access to private equity capital, and you know, on borrowed capital you will do innovation. Very, very different model than what we traditionally have been, which is manufacturers, reverse engineers, and so on and so forth. Very, very different DNA. Some of our companies are trying to reinvent themselves, and every company goes through that cycle. Some of the global names as well, likes of Teva,
which is Israeli,
which is an Israeli company, Mylan, which is now called something else, I forget the name off the top of my mind, but all of these companies have gone through the same cycle. They've started as generics and then over time gotten into specialty, gotten into patented drugs, and then, you know, have, so that migration where some of our companies are also going through. Sun is a leading example there, where they started their journey when they started making a lot of profit, right? And then you have to decide as a promoter, what do I do with this capital, right? And one of the large bets that you want to take is specialty. Otherwise, for you can't be an innovator at heart with 500 crores of EBITDA, with 1,000 crores of EBITDA, right? Because it will probably cost you $100, $200 million just to put a product through the clinical trials. You would probably be betting the house if you are going to use that capital and doing innovation. Remember, innovation is high risk, long gestation, right? High risk meaning outcomes may not be in your hand, drugs may fail. Through the clinic, drugs may fail in the market, drugs may fail regulatory you know, scrutiny. So that kind of risk, you're betting the house, and over an extended period of time. Both these put together means that we have, you know, it will take time for us to be innovators. I think some of our companies are actually doing this rather well. We now have a few examples, right, where others will now follow that lead, and I see many more companies innovating, but it is not going to be an easy, linear, you know, runway. Innovation by its very nature is not linear, whereas pharmaceutical, India manufacturing, India branded business is much more of a linear kind of a business.
So you're saying on the business side, the business is not that cyclical. It's a stable kind of a business.
The demand itself of medicines is not very cyclical. Sure, it is seasonal, you know, in your cough preparations may not do well in some season and so on and so on. By and large, but if you think about blocks of say 2 to 3 years, then demand gradually keeps going up, whether it is generics or branded generics and so on and so forth. So what is cyclical is the pricing in a commodity market like US for the commodity molecules. That's cyclical because it depends on capacity and so on, you know, competitive environment and so on and so forth. But by and large, if you think about the business, the demand not very cyclical.
Is there an example of a medicine or some branded medicine that we innovated but sells in the US?
There will be eventually. So there are a couple of companies that have, you know, signed deals, etc., and they will shortly be in the market. But nothing which is very very large, or
As an Indian, I'm just waiting for our GLP, that moment.
No, so look, I think it's great to want that for us as a country.
Yeah.
But as an investor, I am not falling off my chair for that moment, right? I am thinking every company will go through its cycle and let it happen naturally. I don't want a small company to innovate. You don't have the balance sheet, you don't have the wherewithal to see through the entire process of innovation. What our companies, some of the smaller ones, have done is that early on in the cycle, they have actually out-licensed those molecules to the big pharma, right? And that then, those big pharma companies then see those molecules to their logical conclusion of being in the market and so on and so forth. But again, like I said, it's a long gestation, takes time. Innovation is a very, very different game. And a company can be a great innovator and not be great with, and not be a great investment, and vice versa, right? So, so like I said, as a fund manager, I sweat very little on this aspect.
Speaking of that, Moderna is at the same price that it began in COVID or something like that. Like it's down something like 70-80%.
Yeah, so
from the top.
That's how tough the innovation game is, because their platform was mRNA, which did very well in COVID, and now we just don't need some of those medicines. So sure, they are a great company. mRNA is a great platform, revolutionary platform. One of the CEOs of one of the mRNA vaccine put out a public interview where he said that we had the vaccine prototype in 48 hours of the coronavirus gene being sequenced, right? That's how advanced we are. So it's great for humanity. Is it a great investment?
Maybe. Maybe not.
Depends.
Yeah. So. What are some of the promoters and of the companies that you respect personally, where you are like, these companies are going to generate cash flow, they are probably going to innovate over time, and I know you have named some pharma multiple times, so it's very evident that you respect them. And what are some other companies that you respect in India, and what are some of the off-the-radar companies rather than Ciplas and Sun Pharmas of the world other than there?
So I think from a wealth creation standpoint, many of these companies are first generation entrepreneur companies, as in their success stories are 20-30 years, right? And each of these companies have done well with their own strengths, playing on their own strengths, right? So for someone like what Torrent has been able to achieve, right? In terms of acquisitions in India, the right capital allocation, just sheer execution on a business as old as India business, right? Where you will ask yourself, what is so great about selling a branded medicine, right? But on that, the execution has been so great. So, and these may not be a part of our portfolio, but when you think about some of these promoters, how they've been able to execute very, very differently without just trying to say that, oh, I want to be an innovator, I want to innovate. चलो आज कुछ नया करते हैं, कुछ नया नहीं करते, कुछ नया करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, पैसा बनाने के लिए अच्छा करो, नया करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. Right. That thought process, I think, is a phenomenal thing, right? Just do differently, not like the old adage goes, right? That you don't need to do different things, you just need to do things differently. Some of these promoters have executed so well on the manufacturing side. Again, IPCA promoters, right? Just focused on manufacturing, large scale generic products which are 30-40-year-old molecules, to have a global position on that, backward integrate, be cost leaders in that. It's a phenomenal thing. Some of the newer, smaller companies, even on the services side, right? Someone like a Max Healthcare, someone like an Apollo Hospitals, the kind of scale they've achieved, the kind of business they've built, it's a commendable thing, and what they've been able to create in less than say 2 decades, it's a phenomenal thing. So I think these are some of the guys who have really created a lot of value and thought about the same business a little bit differently.
Why does someone become a cost leader sitting here in India and not someone in China? Because our labor costs are much higher than those in China. So why does that happen?
So process chemistry is very, very clearly, we are competitive to China at a fraction of their scale in the commodity. If you look at specialty chemicals, for example, at a fraction of at a fraction of their scale, we are actually
in specialty,
in a lot of specialty chemicals, right? So process chemistry we are good at. On the formulation side, we manufacture for the whole world, right? Plus India. So there was some Government of India statistics that India manufactures roughly 20% of the world formulation volumes, right? Exports volumes, right? And remember, we don't manufacture or we don't export anything, don't import anything for India. So, and we don't export much to China. So what is 40% of the world population, we don't export or do any business over there. This 20% is to the rest of the 60% of the world.
Of the global formulation, which includes oral, injectables and everything.
Large part of this should be oral and capsules. So we are actually 20 on 60, right? We're 1/3 of the world volumes. Plus we also manufacture for India.
Yeah.
That's how large we are as a country. That scale, where you can just punch millions of tablets, that scale is a huge advantage. The Chinese are also competitive, but they are not present in all the markets, right? And this is because, like I went back, dossier filing of dossier to convince the regulator that I can manufacture this product is something that we've cracked, they haven't, right? So which is why we are very large in formulations. We're not as large as China in API.
How much share do they own? 10-11% globally
In
APIs?
China will have a disproportionately large share in API.
Larger than 10-11%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because India has something like 5%, right?
We would be very small. We'd be very small, probably 2-3% kind of. Also remember, a lot of the APIs we manufacture, we also consume as formulations and then export the formulation. So it's a little difficult.
So not to put the numbers under the lens, but like if you say India manufactures 20% of the global formulations, what's the profit pool that we own out of this whole thing? So if 100 is the manufacturing formulation number, we are at 20. And how much of the profit pool that we are capturing out of this?
Substantially lower, because the patented companies actually have a much larger profit pool. Those medicines are
Eli Lilly's of the world,
the big pharma companies. Let's I don't know about the world, but let's look at US generic, where data is little more reliable. $900 billion overall medicine consumption in the US, give or take. 90% of this by volume is the generics, right? Give or take about 100 billion. This is at the patient prices, right? And $800 billion is the innovator.
Okay.
Right? By value, what is 90-10, 90 in favor of innovators, is actually 10-90 by volume. You understand?
Yeah.
So generics are that cheap, right? In the overall pool of what the patient spends on medicines, we're probably 1/10.
So does this also mean that we have some pricing power left in that sense? Because we are just capturing very small.
Not really. The prices are low because there's very, very large competition.
So it's a commoditized market.
And the innovator is selling it during patent. He is the only one selling in the market, and hence has a lot of pricing power.
Your understanding of healthcare is like bar none. Like it's one of the finest I have ever seen. So like what makes our healthcare fund like different from other funds, except it's being managed by you?
तो देखिए, for any fund, right, for any fund, diversified or thematic or sectoral, you have to have a good mix of various businesses which have multiple drivers, right? Not one driver, two driver that defines the, what the sector will do. Healthcare ऐसा sector है जहाँ पर आप देखो तो बहुत सारे buckets हैं, सारों के drivers अलग है. India formulations चल रहा है अपना, US generics very different drivers, hospitals different
totally
drivers,
alag, yeah.
Diagnostics different drivers, generic API different drivers, CDMO API different drivers, right? सारे अलग अलग businesses, सारे अलग अलग drivers, right? And एक portfolio जब बनता है तो it is a mix of all of these things, all of these companies put together, right? The great thing about healthcare is the availability of multiple businesses within each of these, right? And combinations thereon, and the fact that I don't need to, I am not tied to 1, 2, 3 macro drivers. Each of these are bottom up ideas. तो मुझे अगर US generic अच्छा लग रहा है, within that also there are multiple businesses, multiple business models that I can choose to invest in or not invest in. India अच्छा लग रहा है, again बड़ी companies, छोटी companies, multiple businesses available, right? So just the universe of companies, like we started the discussion, शुरू में हमने discuss किया कि पहले कुछ नहीं थी companies, right? Predominantly India, predominantly US generics. आज बहुत सारी कंपनीज अवेलेबल है. सो वो जो पूल ऑफ कंपनीज है, जो यूनिवर्स ऑफ कंपनीज है, वो एक्सपैंड हो रहा है. अलग अलग बिजनेसेस, मल्टीपल बिजनेसेस एंड मोर कमिंग, मोर डिफरेंशिएटेड बिजनेसेस नाउ कमिंग. तो ये बहुत बड़ा एडवांटेज है इन हेल्थ केयर एज अ सेक्टर. दूसरा, अगर आप हेल्थ केयर एज अ सेक्टर देखेंगे तो डाइवर्सिफाइड इक्विटी में आपके पास जो भी एक्सपोजर होगा, आप कोई से भी डाइवर्सिफाइड इक्विटी पोर्टफोलियो उठा लीजिए, 5 हेल्थ केयर के नाम होंगे, इक्का दुक्का डिफरेंट होंगे.
बिल्कुल.
बाकी 4-5 नाम हर जगह आपको वही बड़े वाले बिग कंपनीज दिखेंगे. इक्का दुक्का डिपेंडिंग ऑन द फंड मैनेजर्स कंफर्ट, मुझे ये स्पेस समझ में आया, मुझे ये मैनेजमेंट अच्छा लगा, सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ. यू विल हैव अ फ्यू परसेंटेज पॉइंट हियर एंड देयर. मोटा मोटा इसी तरह से आपका डाइवर्सिफाइड इक्विटी. तो जब आपके पास 5 डाइवर्सिफाइड इक्विटी स्कीम्स है, शायद आपका डाइवर्सिटी हो ही नहीं रहा है, बहुत सिमिलर सा हेल्थ केयर एक्सपोजर मिल रहा है, और जो नीचे वाले अच्छे क्वालिटी के बिजनेसेस है वो आप ज़्यादा इन्वेस्ट नहीं कर पा रहे हो. हाउ डू यू ऐड टू योर एक्सिस्टिंग हेल्थ केयर एक्सपोजर? इज दैट थ्रू द हेल्थ केयर फंड, इज हाउ वी आर काइंड ऑफ थिंकिंग अबाउट दिस. क्योंकि ये सेक्टर में बहुत सारे ऐसे अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ है जहाँ पे आपको इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए. दीज आर ग्रेट बिजनेसेस. जस्ट बिकॉज इट इज स्मॉल डजंट मीन इट इज अ not a great business, but is it underrepresented in the diversified equity index?
Yes.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Right. And उसका भी reason है. Reason ये है, largest bank in the country will have a 20+ market share.
Yeah.
The largest formulation company in India will have a 8% market share.
Right.
तो एक तो profit pool कम है because the amount of money you spend on a banking service versus what you spend on a medicine.
Yeah.
Right. Within that, what you not what you spend on healthcare. बट आप दवाइयों पे कितना खर्च करते हो, आप हॉस्पिटल पे कितना खर्च करते हो, डायग्नोस्टिक पे, हर इंडिविजुअल में वो फ्रैगमेंटेशन है, उसमें भी मार्केट्स आर फ्रैगमेंटेड. तो वो अंडर रिप्रेजेंटेड है इन दैट सेंस, विच इज़ वाई इक्विटी में अंडर रिप्रेजेंटेड.
बट ओवरऑल मैंने ये भी देखा है कि हेल्थ केयर इंडेक्स हैज़ आउट परफॉर्म ऑल दी अदर ब्रॉड इंडिसेस ओवर अ वेरी लॉन्ग पीरियड ऑफ टाइम. तो ऐसा तो मेनली बिजनेस क्वालिटी की वजह से, बैलेंस शीट क्वालिटी की वजह से, प्रोमोटर ड्रिवन बिजनेसेस, उसकी वजह से हो रहा है. बट एट द सेम टाइम व्हाट मेक्स आवर हेल्थ केयर फंड वेरी डिफरेंट फ्रॉम द अदर फंड्स that are out?
So one of the big differences is we invest in the international companies, about 14% of.
Why? But that hasn't panned out well for us. Why do we do that?
It hasn't worked because bottom up ideas have failed, right? And not really failed, but last 12 months have really been pressing on that, just given the global uncertainty that the world has faced. with tariffs, with politics, with the whole economic environment being tough.
Yeah.
So in that sense, some of our companies have faced issues. One of the big ones, Illumina.
Just down 50%.
It is probably down 50%
in 1 year.
in last 12 months.
1 year, yeah.
It has hurt us a lot. This is the one company. So the Chinese could ban only one company from the US, right?
Yeah.
And this was that one company. The US banned a lot of companies from China, and these guys could ban only one. So that just happens to be in
unlucky
the DSP
over there. Yeah.
happens to be in the DSP portfolio. So that hurt us. Does it mean that these are bad investments? Does it mean that as a fund manager I should not have done this? What international companies do to the overall portfolio is that they add non-correlated businesses with a still healthcare exposure.
Yeah.
Right. Large part of the healthcare generic index, the healthcare index is generic.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's where market capitalization lies. India is very large, US is very large, exports is very large, and so on. How do I add non-correlated exposure to a thematic fund? Right, is by buying this. Are we as Indians consuming more of these? For example, Illumina is a company that makes the gene sequencing machines, right? Gene technology is the next front of medical innovation. Across all market cohorts, usage of gene technology will go up. That's a very, very clear view. We are just scratching the surface, right, as far as gene technology.
Gene technology, okay.
On that, whatever happens, the world will use predominantly Illumina's gene sequencing machine. And of course, the business will see more competition, more people will come, there'll be few startups, and they will bring a different narrative to the market. But the gorilla in the industry will always remain Illumina. So in that sense, we're very comfortable with the business.
How does gene sequencing help the world, if you...
Think of the digital photography, right? एक ज़माने में फोटोग्राफ होता था तो टेप पे बनता था, राइट? अब उसको डिजिटल कर दिया, माने इमेज को आपने X1010 की सीक्वेंस में डाल दिया. जीन सीक्वेंसिंग इज जस्ट दैट, राइट? ह्यूमन जीनोम को आपने X0
मैप आउट कर
दिया. अब आपको सिर्फ ये पता लगाना है कि ये जो डीएनए एबरेशन है, ये इससे क्या होता है. सो
diseases like cancer and all of that.
For everything, आपकी आंखें ब्लू क्यों है, आपकी वो जीन बताएगी. कौन सा जीन आपकी आंखें डिसाइड करेगा, वो अभी तक ह्यूमन साइंस को पता नहीं है, but we are figuring out, right?
Companies like Illumina come into
have
picture
the
over
machines on which the genes are
sequenced. Oh, got it.
और जीन टेक्नोलॉजी का यूसेजेस बढ़ रहा है, ऑन्कोलॉजी में, ऑटो इम्यून में. All of these are new use cases are constantly coming up in gene sequencing, right? For example, one of the biggest use cases we've seen is breast cancer, right? Science has established that the gene mutation which causes breast cancer, or where women are more amenable, that has been established. So now you have to just do a pre-screening, early screening. आपने कैंसर को early phase 1 में पकड़ लिया, stage 1 में पकड़ लिया, तो आप उसको ऑपरेट कर लोगे, life is okay, right? Versus जब आप उसको stage 4 पे पकड़ोगे, तो then it's probably already controlling a lot of your, or it's already affected a lot of your organs and so on, and hence so much more difficult to operate. So ये तो एक use case है. There are multiple such use cases in gene tech. Whatever the use case, large part of the gene sequencing will happen on the Illumina gene sequencing machines, right? The other interesting thing that we liked about Illumina, when we invested, of course, stocks, like you said, has not done well. But the truth remains that 75 to 80% of the Illumina business is not the machines, but the consumables that are used on the machines. Right? So it's a very typical razor and blade business, right? मुझे रेजर बेच के आप पैसा नहीं बनाना है. रेजर तो मैं थोड़ा बहुत प्रॉफिट पे बना दूंगा, लेकिन आपको मैंने रेजर बेच दिया तो मुझे कॉन्फिडेंस है अगले 5 साल तक इतनी ब्लेड्स आप मुझसे लोगे, assuming मेरी तरह आप रोज शेव करोगे, आपकी तरह नहीं, you may change your view, but if that stays, then you can exactly forecast that this consumer means this much business for me in the next 5 years. That kind of predictability, right? For example, in the China example, China is 7% of the business, but only 3 of that is machines. 4 of that is actually the consumables, right? Brings sustainability to the business. Now it may not be something that the market appreciates near term, but I think over the longer term, markets will appreciate some of these nuances. This is how we are thinking about it. But that said, in the last 12 months, our performance has been poor because of our international.
Relative to the benchmark.
Relative to the Indian benchmark which has done well.
How much is the Indian benchmark that's up?
Indian benchmark, I don't have the number off the top of my head.
Just roughly.
But probably 12-13%.
And you were up?
And we are probably up 5-6%.
Okay.
And large part of this difference is because of the international companies not doing well for us.
You have like close to 14-15% of the portfolio in international companies.
After the fall.
After the fall. Okay. So they haven't done really much. Actually, they have really harmed your performance is what I can see.
Yes, in the last 12 months, and that has actually seeped into the last 3 years and 5 years as well. Yeah. Because when that kind of large, in just a 6-month or a 12-month period of 4 to 5 percentage point underperformance comes, it actually seeps through the 3 or 5 years.
But that's like comparing, an Infosys with Nvidia's performance, which is likely to, disappoint you. But that's what we are doing over here. If we are
yes and no.
Like, Illumina with Indian benchmark,
which is a fair point. But look, the investor, I don't want to confuse the investor because the investor is finally
they don't care. Yeah.
The benchmark is BSc Healthcare, and I had the choice of investing exactly zero in international names. So these are commissions of errors. They make no mistake. These are errors of commission.
Yeah.
And the idea is that some of this will fix on its own as the business kind of, what we were originally thinking about the business, that is true or not is what I focus on entirely.
So are we adding to our exposure at the moment?
Adding at the margins.
Okay.
At the margins. But I'm literally today licking my wounds rather than अपनी गलतियाँ गिन रहा हूँ rather than trying to act brave.
और आपका मैंने ये भी देखा है कि आप बहुत अलग टाइप की पोजीशंस को भी बहुत बड़ा बना लेते हो. So like एक पोजीशन है आपके पास कोहेंस, वो कितना है बेंचमार्क के अंदर?
बेंचमार्क से हमारे पास ऑलमोस्ट 5-6 परसेंटिज पॉइंट ज़्यादा वेट होगा.
या सो लाइक वो बेंचमार्क के अंदर जो 1-2% की चीज़ है
वो हमारे पास
और आपके पास 8% है.
ठीक
है. सो लाइक व्हाई डज दैट हैपन? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल मैंने ये किसी के भी पोर्टफोलियो में देखा नहीं है और इतना बड़ा वेट नहीं देखा है. सो व्हाई डू यू लाइक कोहेंस लाइफ साइंसेस? सो
कोहेंस
लाइफ साइंसेस सो मच.
सो ओके, लेट्स टॉक अबाउट कोहेंस. देखिए, इट इज़ अ CDMO is a very very big theme.
CDMO करता क्या है, एक बार दोबारा से बताते हैं.
CDMO है जहाँ पे आप पैटेंटेड कंपनीज के लिए API बनाते हो.
ठीक है. तो
फाइजर ने अपनी रेसिपी आपके साथ शेयर करी जो वो ग्लोबली एज अ सोल मैन्युफैक्चरर बेचने वाला है. Imagine the discomfort that Pfizer would have had or an innovator has. He's sharing his recipe, मेरा proprietary formula. मतलब कोक वाले कोक का फॉर्मूला किसी को दे नहीं रहे, आप अपने दवाई का फॉर्मूला किसी को दिया हुआ है आपने कि आप बताइए ये दवाई. दैट काइंड ऑफ रिस्पेक्ट, दैट काइंड ऑफ ट्रस्ट द कंपनी हैज टू हैव with the big pharma.
So it's a competitor to something like Syngene International.
Syngene, Divi's, Anthem, Sai Life, multiple CDMO companies, and globally in China, Wuxi, those kind of companies. So China is the big daddy here. Right, they have a very large market share. Companies like Wuxi, etc., are extremely large.
So they are large in CDMO.
They are large in CDMO.
Largest in the world.
Largest तो नहीं कह सकते, but amongst the larger companies. The other bucket is some of the Swiss companies which are very very large. CDMO में you and I can't start a CDMO business because nobody will give us an entry. आपको factory चाहिए, आपको chemistry skills चाहिए,
आपको PhDs चाहिए,
PhDs चाहिए और कंपनी का भरोसा चाहिए, कस्टमर का भरोसा चाहिए. Why should the customer trust you? आप कौन हो, right? It takes time to build that, and remember, this is big pharma.
It's like an AMC business. It takes time to build trust.
Time.
Yeah.
It takes time. And remember, in AMC business आप तो पैसा withdraw भी कर सकते हो.
इसमें नहीं कर सकते.
इसमें कुछ नहीं कर सकते.
एक बार दे दिया फॉर्मूला तो
आपने फॉर्मूला दे दिया, और if that manufacturer goofs up, उसने ठीक से नहीं बनाया, उसने वो फॉर्मूला लीक हो गया, whatever happens, right? You will bear the consequences of that, and for what? A fraction of your overall medicine cost, right? जो दवाई आप $100 में बनाते हो, उसकी API की कॉस्ट शायद $2 से $4 के बीच होगी. $2 के लिए आप $100 का रिस्क ले रहे हो. यू अंडरस्टैंड द पॉइंट? अगर उसने $2 की दवाई की कैपेसिटी कम लगाई और कहा कि सर मैं 100 यूनिट्स की जगह से 50 यूनिट्स आपको बेचूंगा, आपके $100 के हिसाब से सेल्स कम होगी. यू अंडरस्टैंड? वेरी वेरी क्रिटिकल, very difficult business, very difficult to enter, very difficult to scale up. Now Cohance has done all of these, and China plus one is a very very potent theme that is.
You think so?
Yes.
Okay.
Biosecure Act जो second phase में आया, in the first phase people were actually doing China plus one, Europe plus one through COVID only. कोविड के समय लोगों को रियलाइज हुआ एक कंट्री पे इतना डिपेंडेंस ठीक नहीं है, राइट? एक और वेंडर डेवलप करो. ग्रेजुअली होता है, कुछ भी ओवरनाइट नहीं होता है. फार्मा में कुछ भी ओवरनाइट नहीं होता, राइट? एवरीथिंग इज ग्रेजुअल, बिकॉज रिमेंबर रेगुलेटरी. जो भी आप कहेंगे, जो भी आप करना चाह रहे हो, वो सारा कुछ रेगुलेटर को अप्रूव करना है कि हाँ ठीक है आप कर सकते हो ये, सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ, राइट? सो दैट कोविड वाज लीडिंग टू चाइना प्लस वन, एंड देन ओवर टाइम that really picked up scale, right? And we have now entered a phase where a lot of pharma companies just want to diversify away from China with a mathematical number in mind. That if we are 80% from China, we want to take this to 60%. Which means a lot more of your incremental business comes to India. And we are seeing signs of this. ये data में हमें दिख रहा है.
Or some other countries?
Not really. ये हो ही नहीं सकता, किसी और कंट्री में जा नहीं सकता. सी आप ऐसे ही सोचिए, केमिकल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग क्लस्टर्स में होती है. केमिकल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग आप कल हम वियतनाम में फैक्ट्री नहीं लगा सकते. क्यों नहीं लगा सकते? क्योंकि केमिकल्स की पूरी एक क्लस्टर होती है, राइट? इमेजिन करिए 20 इंग्रेडिएंट्स आते, आप उसको प्रोसेस करके एक मॉलिक्यूल बना रहे हैं. कुछ एक पेट्रोकेमिकल है, कुछ कोई और है, कुछ सॉल्ट से बन के आ रहा है, कुछ कहीं और से बन के आ रहा है. ऑल ऑफ दैट इज पुट टुगेदर टू मेक वन मॉलिक्यूल. ऑल ऑफ दैट सप्लाई हैज टू बी देयर, एंड हेंस केमिकल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग बाय एंड लार्ज इज ऑलवेज इन क्लस्टर्स. यूरोप एक हो गया, चाइना दूसरा, इंडिया तीसरा, यूएस a little bit, that's how these things happen. So we are the only choice. अगर आपको चाइना प्लस वन करना है तो आपको यूरोप के पास जाना पड़ेगा. यूरोप इंक्रीमेंटल कैपेसिटी नहीं डाल रहा है. यूएस के पास जाना पड़ेगा, इंक्रीमेंटल कैपेसिटी नहीं डाल रहा है. तो कौन डाल रहा है कैपेसिटी? हम डाल रहे हैं. डेटा में हमें दिख रहा है. क्या दिख रहा है हमें डेटा में? कि जो लेट स्टेज पाइपलाइन है, कि जो आपने शुरू नहीं करी फेज 3 के बाद की पाइपलाइन, कि ये हमें पता है ये मॉलिक्यूल काम करता है. हमने ट्रायल्स में देखा, 500 लोगों में हमने ट्राई करा ये मेडिसिन, हमें पता है ये काम करता है. अब हमारा अगला स्टेप क्या होगा? रेगुलेटर के पास जाएंगे, हम कहेंगे हमें अप्रूवल दे दीजिए इस दवाई का, अगले 2 साल में ये प्रोडक्ट मार्केट में होगा, विल बी सोल्ड. सक्सेसफुल होगा नहीं होगा वो अलग बात है, बट ये मैं जानता हूँ मेरे लिए मिशन क्रिटिकल है. फेज 3 में आकर के आपने इंडियन को मौका दिया, RFQ फ्लोट किया.
What is RFQ?
रिक्वेस्ट फॉर प्रपोजल.
Okay.
कि हम ये दवाई बनाने वाले हैं, आप हमें बताइए आप बना सकते हैं कि नहीं. राइट? फॉर्मूला नहीं शेयर करेंगे, लेकिन हम चाहते हैं कि आप इसमें ये केमिस्ट्री रिएक्शन करेंगे, वो करेंगे, सो ऑन एंड सो. तो आपके पास ये है क्या, वो है क्या, सो ऑन एंड सो.
Sort of a tender.
Sort of a tender in that sense. लेट स्टेज मॉलिक्यूल पाइपलाइन, मतलब आप इमेजिन करिए फेज 3 में है, ये अगले 2 साल में मार्केट में आ जाएगा. आपको पता है सक्सेसफुल होगा नहीं होगा अलग बात है. ये कभी नहीं हुआ है कि इतनी तेजी से आपको लैटरल आपके पाइपलाइन में मॉलिक्यूल्स आ रहे हैं. तो आपकी लेट स्टेज पाइपलाइन फेज 3 मॉलिक्यूल्स 2 थे, 2 से 9 हो गए, 4 गुना इंक्रीज, राइट? 4x इंक्रीज इन योर लेट स्टेज पाइपलाइन, एंड दिस इज प्रोडक्ट्स वेयर which will probably see light of the day in the next 2-3 years. when you are buying companies in CDMO, you want to buy companies which may become lucky. Not the ones that
Asymmetry.
Not the ones that are all that have already become lucky. क्योंकि उसमें तो क्या है, linearity है, ठीक है. जो अभी तक लकी नहीं हुए हैं वो invariably महंगे भी दिखेंगे.
So you're trying to find inflection points.
I am trying to find inflection points.
And you think you have the caliber to actually, stack the odds. Which company is more likely to?
You have to balance that. So इसमें क्या होता है, is a little bit of both.
Doesn't seem that much of a balance if you're 6% overweight in one thing.
Which is a fair. In fact, if you look at our overall CDMO exposure, Ramneek, it'll be even higher.
Yeah.
So Cohance is just one of the CDMO companies. We own a bunch of others as well.
So you clearly have a view. It's not like balance kind of a thing.
No, there is a view on the pipeline.
Yeah.
There is a view on, what these companies have achieved and hence will be able to achieve.
Yeah.
The other thing, great thing about CDMO companies is that आप किसी एक कस्टमर के पास जाते हो, वो कस्टमर आपको किसी एक कैपेबिलिटी के लिए जानता है कि हाँ ठीक है, अगर मुझे फ्लोरिनेशन कराना है तो इस कंपनी से करा लेते, ये दुनिया की सबसे अच्छा फ्लोरिनेशन करेगा, चीपेस्ट और बेस्ट करेगा. कोई और प्रोसेस रन करना है तो इसके बाद चले जाएंगे, सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ. एवरीबडी नोज व्हाट यू आर केपेबल ऑफ, राइट? नॉट एवरीबडी इज केपेबल ऑफ डूइंग एवरीथिंग. बट आप जैसे जैसे अपनी कॉम्पिटेंसी एक्सपैंड करते हो, कैपेबिलिटी एक्सपैंड करते हो, आप सेम कस्टमर के पास जाते हो और कहते हो कि आप मुझे 2 सेगमेंट्स में बिजनेस दे रहे थे, अब मैं 4 कर पा रहा हूँ, कोशिश तो करिए, ट्राई मी आउट, राइट? यू हैव मोर शॉट्स टू द गोल, राइट? सो आई एम लुकिंग फॉर सच कंपनीज, राइट? सो व्हाट इज द फ्रेमवर्क इन CDMO? Companies which not yet lucky may get lucky. Companies that are expanding their capabilities.
Yeah, and have capacity to suffer.
And have capacity to suffer.
For some
Fundamentally, इस business में capacity to suffer होता है, because ROICs are good, margins are good. Customer wants you to make margin. Yeah. क्योंकि remember, go back to my earlier number. Yeah. $2 से $4 के बीच में अगर आप $1 एक्स्ट्रा बना भी लोगे तो कौन सी आफत आ जाएगी? मेरा तो $100 का बिजनेस इम्पैक्ट हो जाएगा अगर आप उस $1 को बचाने के चक्कर में मेरा $100 का नुकसान हो जाएगा. दैट आई विल नॉट लेट हैपन. सो द फ्रेमवर्क इन CDMO इज कंपनीज दैट मे गेट लकी, नॉट येट, राइट? एंड कंपनीज दैट आर कॉन्स्टेंटली एक्सपैंडिंग देयर कैपेबिलिटीज and have that opportunity to get invited to clients. So they have customer relationships, they are enhancing capabilities and hence have more shots to the goal and have not yet been lucky on the pipeline front. So this is the framework. It's a space we love, we like, we think structural,
What's the free cash flow or earnings of Cohance at the moment?
At the moment, much lower.
How much is it?
इसमें actually
just roughly
probably about 800 odd crores.
Okay, and what's the market cap?
32,000 crores. तो ये महंगा है, 100% महंगा है on current earnings, right? But clearly, one is thinking about what this business will look like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the line. Also, the last point that I want to make is that हमने actively 8% allocate नहीं किया.
It has increased to that.
It has increased to that.
But you're holding it.
What we've chosen to do is not disturb the compounding process, because we are, we think that this company has a right to win. And ये जो near term pain आएगा, we will take that pain rather than try to be, optimize this.
Okay. So Chirag, one of the things that I realize is you are a phenomenal business analyst. You just understand the nitty-gritties of the business way better than any healthcare fund manager or a healthcare analyst that I have engaged with.
That tells me I'm bad at something.
Or I have engaged with lower number of healthcare managers. So, but the thing is, like, one thing I have seen is, you buy a lot of expensive looking stocks or seemingly expensive stocks that I have researched, but I have not been able to get my head around valuation, even if the numbers that you talk about would come. And probably, there's an inherent assumption over there as well that these businesses would re-rate sort of higher or won't lose their, current valuation multiples. Like, why are you making those assumptions? One. Second thing is, what makes you super confident that these multiples won't come down?
The point you make is very valid, that I first look at business, right? Quality of the business, what is changing, what is not in the price is very, very important. Now, how do you define what's not in the price, right? Our typical style is profit, P multiples, and then versions of that, sustainable profitability, EV EBITDA, EV sales, whatever, depending on the, So that's one lens that we typically look at. In my mind, the way I'm thinking when I'm buying businesses which are a little expensive is, what is the market getting this wrong? How will the perception of this business change?
So you have sort of variant perception on the business.
Correct.
Whether it could be like, something like market is saying the business is good. Like for example, Cohen's market is already saying the business is good. But you are saying, no, it's not good, it's great.
It is great.
It is possibly
great. It will
great.
dramatically be different, 2 years out. Yeah. The momentum itself will be fairly superior is how we, and of course what you're saying is very correct, that when you are already paying high multiples for that, the scope of going wrong on that is very high. We've suffered that in Cohen's for the last 12 months, right? So if I look at the 3-year period in Cohen's, we made money in the first 2 and lost in the next 1 year. So it's a journey which is, par for course in that sense in my mind. What is important is that the relevant metrics, the relevant aspects of the business are not deteriorating, right? That's the important bit. So for someone like a Cohen's late stage pipeline, is that pipeline building up? Will it come tomorrow, day after? I don't know. Nobody really knows, really, and I couldn't care less. Right? Am I going to be able to bear this pain is the more important thing, and the answer is yes. Most of the trouble in the last 12 months is a mark to market in that sense, right? In a sense that it's a good business, good quality business going through a tough cycle right now. And like I said, not been very lucky as yet being the very important piece. Yeah. Will it get lucky? There is a pipeline. It'll be a 6 sigma or a very, very low probability event that a large pipeline, nothing of that fires, right? Just very, very difficult. In that scenario, maybe life will be tough for us, as it has been in the last 6 months. But if nothing happens over the next 2 years as well on that pipeline, then we will suffer. So it is very, very important for expensive names, or seemingly on current earnings expensive names, to look at what are the matrices which you look at. And there, some of these may be financial, some of these may not be financial, some of these may be business like, and so on and so forth. What are those matrices and how are they sort of progressing? What is happening on that front is the key question to ask before you decide whether the business is doing.
So you are just adding some call options which are asymmetrical and could turn out to be in your favor.
That is the
in the portfolio.
That is the idea.
And that could really give you a good delta on the upside. Downside as well, but that's what you think.
Downside a lot less permanent, probably temporary, and upside far more permanent.
Yeah, you have a handicapped the odds better than what the market is currently assuming.
You'd want to believe that, but markets teach you every day how stupid you are or how great you are, and everything else in between, right? So,
but see, with healthcare, I still believe that you have a considerable edge over managers like someone like myself, and I would trust your judgment in healthcare much more than my own. But the thing is, when it comes to your multi-cap portfolio as well, you have certain call option kind of positions, like for example, Schaeffler is there, right? And that business has done well, right? Good management, pedigree, and great execution. If you go to their factory, state of the art, right? Like some of them also look like something like Tesla. When I think about what I'm paying for this business. Like they have gone through an acquisition recently, right? And they are going to build many more products which will provide the adjacencies to the auto OEMs. But don't you think you are consistently paying too much for some of the businesses, and you could have like many more Illuminas in your portfolio on a 1 year basis? I'm nothing to say about the stock price, because any portfolio, one of the portfolio stocks falling 50% could be just a aberration. But like, don't you fear something like that? Because I've seen you are very business driven, and that could turn one a little bit blind to the valuation, because you are in love with the business, or like, so that bias comes in.
Sure. So look, I think the framework helps here, right? What is the framework? Is to broadly, and I've spoken about this publicly as well, is to break the portfolio into 4 buckets, and this is the same for both the schemes, whether it is diversified or healthcare. Value, growth, compounders, and turnaround, right? And to make sure that you don't have a very high skew to any of these. The underlying principle remains that you make sure that you don't have a very high style skew towards any particular bucket. So that's one, in some sense, guardrail, right? But that doesn't take away from the fact that on an absolute basis, you do own a company which is expensive on current earnings. And the one that you talked about, Schaeffler, this company is changing, right? And this falls in the growth bucket. This and within growth bucket, I don't have like unlimited shots. It's not like I can own like 100% of the portfolio in growth bucket. In the growth bucket, Schaeffler will have to compete with, say, the Titans of the world, the Tanishq, the Trends of the world, the DMarts of the world, and compete and tell me that this is a better business, better value at better valuations today versus some of those companies to kind of own. So this framework, in that sense, kind of avoids to make sure that you avoid the big ones of having a very large skew towards just one particular.
So you say, like, you don't want to be labeled as value growth or any kind of an investor, but the thing is, you always say like buy businesses below their intrinsic or true value. Isn't it value investing? That's what value investing is. Whether you are building in growth assumptions or
all of these are labels that you and I have put, Ramneek. At the end of the day, what do you and I want to achieve, right? We want to buy a company which is today available for 100, where I think it can be 200, right? That's the underlying thing, right? And nobody really knows whether that will be 200 or 250 or maybe 80. But the idea is that how people are looking at valuing this company, or the usual tools available to us to value this company, are probably not great, right? In some sense, for example, everybody uses PE multiples and derived versions.
But that's value factor investing. So value factor investing is like something is at 7 PE and something is at 20 PE. You buy the one at 7 PE. That's value factor investing. You are looking at the factors. You are not looking at many other things, right? But value investing essentially is buying something below its intrinsic worth, and intrinsic worth could be 7 PE, 70 PE, or 170 PE. It doesn't matter, because
so all of these 4 buckets are just like that, right? It's just that when in each of these buckets, when you put companies, you ask very, very different questions. Why is a 100 PE stock in my portfolio versus another 100 PE stock? Which of these two are the business to own? Which means in the growth bucket, you ask the question is, what is the implied growth expectation? Can this company deliver better than this growth? What is the market thinking about this company, right? Is there potential for this company to do better than what the market is today thinking? And market defined as, we talk to everybody on the market, right? Broadly sell side, consensus, and so on and so forth. Can this company do better than how we are thinking about this? Within that bucket, these companies have to fight for their place in the portfolio. 100 रुपए के portfolio में I cannot have सारा का सारा in growth, high P or value and hence low P, right? ये सारे labels है हमने आपने लगाए हैं
But Munger has always said, you know, like all intelligent investing is value investing. Because what we are trying to do is buying something below the worth, you know, like you are saying, for example, with Schaeffler, right? You are basically saying 4 years from now this company would be very different. What you are saying is कि आज इसकी full value reflected नहीं है, 4 साल बाद it would be much higher.
In that sense, everything is value.
Yeah,
100%.
So that's what you are doing. That's what I'm saying. So why not even stick to the labels? The thing we don't stick to the labels is because other people assume something else, right?
Correct.
So that happens a lot. Like, you know, as soon as you say value manager, other people are like, ये क्या different करने वाला है, ये तो same चीज़ ही करेगा. But people don't understand value investing is, you know, is not just low factor, multiple kind of investing. There's much broader spectrum to it. So yeah, I mean, I think you're a phenomenal, like, you know, business analyst and come fund manager. Like I would, you know, I make a point on a regular basis to go through your portfolio whenever the fact sheet comes out, and you know कि चिराग ने इतना सिपला बढ़ा दिया है, इतना कम कर दिया. Like that's always a point of thinking for me. And how do you deal with something like tariffs and you know, the news comes out about FDA and all of that. Like usually these things have been, you know, buying and entry points for people like me. So why do people get scared all the time?
Markets factor today's truth fully.
Yeah.
Right. Where is our USP is I am trying to find tomorrow's truth. What will the market think about tomorrow, not today?
Yeah.
आज एक FDA आया और फैक्ट्री पे ताला लगा दिया, right? ये आज की सच्चाई है. मार्केट विल से आज की सच्चाई को फुली रिफ्लेक्ट करो प्राइस में. राइट. टू से दैट ये फैक्ट्री बंद हो गई इसलिए कंपनी बंद हो जाएगी इज प्रीटी मच यूजलेस एज अ एनालिसिस. सारी बाजार उसी में लगी हुई है, सभी उसी में लगे हुए कि अच्छा ये इवेंट हो गया, अब इसका क्या इम्पैक्ट होगा. राइट. हमें क्या करना है, हमें कल का ट्रूथ ढूंढना है. कल बाजार क्या सोचेगी. राइट. क्या सोचेगी बाजार कल. एफडीए आया, एफडीए ने ताला लगाया, ठीक है. एफडीए कब तक ताला लगाएगा. राइट. और इफ आई थिंक बियॉन्ड ऑल दिस कि भाई ठीक है चलिए 2-3 साल तक फैक्ट्री बंद रहेगी फिर तो आ जाएगी, क्या ये इस प्राइस के अंदर ऑलरेडी रिफ्लेक्टेड है, हाँ या नहीं. एफडीए क्या करेगा मुझे नहीं पता है, कंपनी क्या करेगी मुझे नहीं पता है. मुझे ये पता है कि मार्केट आज के दिन इसको क्या प्राइस दे रहा है एंड व्हाट इज द मार्केट एज्यूमिंग इन दिस पर्टिकुलर प्राइस. वो तो हमारे हाथ में. उसी में आई थिंक यू एंड अप विनिंग. माई एक्सपीरियंस विद एफडीए in the last 10, 15, 20 years has been, it is broadly an opportunity. Yeah. Because see, companies, promoters, entrepreneurs, they will also reinvent themselves. Yeah. Right. I want to do well in the business. I am not a crook. Yeah. Right? Unless the company is absolute crook, and there have been a few examples there as well. ऐसा नहीं है कि there haven't been. We are not, हम सब दूध के धुले नहीं हैं. But by and large, you have some sense कि ये कंपनी कैसी है, ये प्रोमोटर्स कैसे है, इनका कल्चर कैसा है. इन मेनी केसेस हमने फैक्ट्री विजिट्स करी है तो वी नो कि इसका ये कल्चर है, वो सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ. सो यू आर एबल टू काइंड ऑफ एटलीस्ट डिफरेंशिएट यू नो इन टर्म्स ऑफ व्हाट द मार्केट इज थिंकिंग, और शायद ये आउटकम्स में भी डिफरेंट. सो दैट्स ऑन द एफडीए. ऑन टैरिफ्स आई थिंक जेनेरिक्स को बाहर रखा गया है टैरिफ्स का. नाउ तो मिस्टर ट्रम्प इज ऑल्सो इन हिज ट्वीट ओनली सेइंग that branded pharma and patented pharma companies are you know going to be levied this and so on and so forth. For the first time उनका जो लास्ट ट्वीट था उसमें he is differentiated. अब तक वो सिर्फ फार्मा कहते थे तो हमें पता नहीं चलता था कि जेनरिक में क्या करेंगे. For the first time is very clear कि branded patented अलग से उन्होंने लेबल कर दिया. जेनेरिक्स के लिए एक इंक्वायरी हो रही है, वो यू नो वट एवर हैपन्स ऑन दैट. बट बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट ये है कि a much larger part of the value of generic medicine actually sits in the US. What we sell for $40 gets sold in the US for $100. So जो $60 की difference है, that sits in the US, made by the trade sitting in the US. So in my mind I am very clear that as far as generics are concerned, tariffs are you know irrelevant. They will be passed on. एक तो लगेंगे नहीं, लगेंगे तो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग प्राइस पे लगेंगे, वो $40 वाले प्राइस पे लगेंगे। $40 पे अगर 25% टैरिफ लग भी गया तो कितना इम्पैक्ट होगा? $10। $10 ऑन $100 इज 10% ऑन 90% ऑफ द वॉल्यूम ऑफ द मार्केट। मान लीजिए अगर आप पेशेंट हो और आप 10 गोलियां दिन में खा रहे हो, उसमें से 9 जेनेरिक गोलियां हैं, उस पर अगर 10% प्राइस हाइक हो भी गई तो कौन सी आफत आ जाएगी? तो टैरिफ्स नॉइज़ है, इसमें बहुत कुछ होगा, हर दिन पेपर में आप पढ़ेंगे, कुछ आएगा कुछ नहीं आएगा, हर दिन आपको लगेगा आज जीत गए, आज हार गए, आज जीत गए, आज हार गए वगैरह। बट आई थिंक ओवर टाइम इफ अगर टैरिफ्स, मैं तो कहता हूँ आज ही लग जाए, इन 6 months वी विल नॉट बी वरीड अबाउट टैरिफ्स एट ऑल।
एक तो मुझे लगता है आपका टाइम होराइजन भी ना सबसे बहुत डिफरेंट है। आप 4, 5, 7 साल की बात करते हो, एंड आई थिंक दैट really is great in a fund manager, and it really differentiates you from others who are talking about like few quarters or like even 1-2 years. So that's really good to see. So thanks Chirag, thanks for being with us, and I learned a lot through this conversation, and like I always do whenever I have a conversation with you. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me here. Hopefully we get a lot of views on this as well, as high as your earlier shows.
Thank you. So we had a really insightful session today with Chirag Dugli, who is one of the finest business analysts and fund manager out there. What we learned about healthcare sector is not easily, broken down by most of the people that you talk to in the industry. And I personally learned a lot. Hope you did too. Until next time.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.